Here we go. GM, everybody. Welcome to a brand new show with Somnia. And I've got Paul with me in the hot seat today as we go on a little bit of an origin story. Cannot wait to dive into the conversation. Somnia, a fully on-chain world for millions of users, the fastest 1 million TPS and most cost-efficient EVM L1 blockchain with multi-stream consensus, bringing the entire world's data fully on chain. So, Paul, how is it going today? It's going to be a banger of a show. I always love an origin story show. Love getting to know how this all came about. But how's it for you? Is this one of your first video shows in a while?
Oh no, I've been doing a roadshow recently. I did one on
Nice.
Monday, had one last week, did one with I've been doing a bunch recently. This is why I got my professional mic. Look, check it out.
Oh yeah, that is
I'm
true.
a proper streamer now. I'm a proper
Yeah,
streamer.
yeah. You got the new job.
I've got a whole like lighting setup back here as well. I'm
No way.
ready.
Yeah, no, I actually that should have been something I clocked immediately. That is a pretty professional setup you've got there, and a lot more books than I have. I'm not going to lie, definitely a lot more books.
I actually built this weekend because I kept having a background that was just a plain white wall, and I was like, I've got to have something in the background. So I was like, I'm going to build a bookshelf.
Well, you have books to put in it. I'm going to give you, unless that they came with the bookshelf. Which
No. I did already own the books. They were just in like stacks.
Cool. Now, look, genuinely really excited about this. Somnia, really cool project, and something that I think realistically we've had a big load of engagement for already. Like the audience are already cooking. Big shout out to all of our speakers. If you could give us a like, a retweet, any support for the show. If you like this sort of content, getting to know projects, hearing from the projects, then it's a really easy way to show that support and show us that, yeah, this content works for you. I'd love to see more of it. Also, give them a follow. This will give you updates to when we do these regular shows. And yeah, that's really it. I think, look, to get into it, I'd love to start with the initial vision, Paul, and like basically just, as I say, origin story. Think Batman Origin, if you've seen it, like really genuinely, like how did this all come to be? And I guess the first question specifically is, with Somnia's mission and it being to enable mass consumer real-time application to be built at Web2 scale with Web3 priorities, what sparked that vision for you, and how does your background / experience, how does it shape what you guys at Somnia are looking to achieve here?
Cool. Do you want to do the whole story, like front to back? This is the
I really
big
do.
story. All
Yeah,
right, okay.
I want to hear it
Let's do the
all.
big story. So, for context, my background, I'm an engineer, and I used to work at this company called Improbable. So we did games, technology, and services. Basically, we sold it to the games industry, selling it to like big AAA studios, smaller independent studios, the whole gamut. When 2016-17 rolled around, Ethereum came out, and I was like, this is awesome. This kind of decentralized world computer with a global ledger. I'm like, this is going to completely change everything in terms of digital assets. And so internally, I was like pitching it really hard. I was like, we need to put all of the games we're working with on top of the blockchain. This is going to be the future of digital items inside video games. They all thought I was crazy. They looked at me like, you're mad, but kept going, and eventually convinced them to give me a small research team. And so we started kind of doing some R&D with early Ethereum to kind of work out how you could put digital assets from video games onto the blockchain and have it used as ownership records. Didn't work, completely failed. The problem was scale. With video games, you have games that tens of thousands, 100,000, millions of people are playing. So they're all trying to interact on chain. Doesn't work at all. So I was like, okay, nice idea. Tech is not quite ready yet. So fast forward to 2019, 2020, Improbable now started doing the metaverse. We don't call it the metaverse yet. At the moment, we just call it digital events for the music and sports industry. Cool. We did things like Major League Baseball, where we did digital baseball events. We did things like Universal Music. We did K-pop events. And all of these events were owned by different businesses. And they were all kind of isolated little mini metaverses. We didn't call it metaverse yet. And the problem we wanted to solve was, how does a consumer go to one of these events, buy some digital items, and then use them across all of the events? Because that's how they were going to monetize at the end of the day. And I was like, all right, guys, blockchain. This is how we solve this. Open, trusted, decentralized ledger with some computing capabilities. I'm like, this is how we solve this. So again, start looking at the chains in the market at that point in time. The whole ecosystem has come forward quite a bit. You've got high performance chains like Aptos and Sui starting to be talked about, but they're quite new still. And I was particularly kind of wedded to that we had to be on top of the EVM. The reason for this is, I've made technologies in the past where I've tried to get developers to adopt new programming languages and whole new ecosystems, and it was a nightmare. Literally spent millions of dollars wasted my time. I was like, I'm not doing that again. So I was like, we have to go on top of the EVM. We have to go where the devs are, basically. So we couldn't. EVM ecosystem was nowhere near anything like that yet. So we were like, okay, how do we solve this problem? So that's when we started doing first-party research into a high-performance blockchain, and that's what Somnia became, basically. So we're trying to solve the problem of interoperability in the metaverse, and what we really made was like it went way beyond what we thought we were going to build, basically, in terms of performance. And so now what we're really trying to do is enable developers to put more logic and data on chain across loads of different sectors and segments, because we believe that can allow people to build better applications and build them faster and get them out to more users. So yeah, that's the origin story. It's quite a big one.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And look, the way sort of the metaverse came into play here, and then the blockchain. Because look, I know you've been around for a while now, but were you in any way involved with the hype that went around the NFT cycle? Because
I,
go on.
I owned some NFTs. They were all pretty much failed projects. Do you remember I can't remember what they're called. They were like these robots, mecha robots or something.
Yes,
Mechas.
yes,
They looked sick, and I was like, I've got to get one of these. I spent far too much money on one of these,
yeah,
and now it's worthless pretty much. But I still have it there. I've also got a Ret guy. I bought that during the FTX collapse, just to
yes.
remember that moment. And I still look at my Ret guy. I'm like, FTX collapse, great. So yeah, I do have some NFTs. I was into the space, but I think Web3 metaverse didn't really work out. I think the problem was you were taking basically a centralized platform and putting it on top of blockchain, which isn't really what you should be doing there. And metaverse is actually being quite successful in the Web2 world. We just don't really think about it as a metaverse. So things like Roblox, which has millions of people, things like Fortnite, these are all metaverses and they're massively successful. Just didn't think it quite worked out in Web3. But yeah, NFTs, I didn't go mad because I'm personally a very logical investor, is the way I put about it. And I just saw the price of everything going up. I'm like, I don't understand why these are worth so much money. But some of them I thought were really cool. So I was like, I've got to buy some of these. Cool.
No, that's so cool. And look, the context I had there, it was sort of what you alluded to, was they seem to really latch on to the metaverse, like really early. Like you had all these NFT projects that were valued at like these crazy figures that not many people could understand, and eventually sort of did self-correct. But like all of them decided that metaverse was the play. Like, no matter what they were, it could have been like a little anime project, could have been like these cute little animals, whatever. They all had their own vision of building an entire metaverse. And everyone in the NFT space was like, oh yeah, 6 months, right? Like, if we give enough money to it. And I think coming in from the different direction, which you again just hinted to, with the fact that we do have actual case studies of these things working in the traditional sense. Your Fortnites, they have partnered with so many incredible IPs at this point that you can wear, you can own. That really is Ready Player One shit. Like, it really is getting there. So I completely agree with that. And I guess this sort of brings me full circle into a question that I have for you, which we saw how the traditional ecosystem sort of worked with metaverses and seemed to garner a little bit more success. Was there any moment for you where you were like, no, blockchain still is a missing piece to this? And what made you consider that, with the success that we have seen in the traditional space and not really seeing that so much in the Web3 space thus far?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. I think the biggest one, this is getting a bit nerdy, is so we looked at Roblox a lot and talked to a lot of developers on that platform. And the problem is you can't make a business on Roblox, and you can't make a business on Fortnite. They have these really high fees, literally take 70% of your revenues, and it's just not a sustainable business. They're also, because they're central platforms, they can just change the rules and make your game or experience completely irrelevant or completely unplayable. And that for me was like an aha moment of like, there is a big problem with these centralized Web2 metaverses that Web3 could solve, because Web3 is open, it's interoperable. You don't have these centralized control structures. You also have much better models in terms of revenue share and revenue take. And you can build an actual durable business on here. So when we started working with the major brands, they interestingly didn't want to go to Roblox. They wanted to have their own experience because they wanted to control the economics, control the player base, and have that for themselves. And I kind of sat there and I was like, if we want these to be interoperable, blockchain is the way to solve this, because it's like an open, trusted infrastructure that everyone can rely on. So that's why that came about. And I still truly believe this to this day. I think the problem with the metaverse today and why it hasn't become like as massive as it could be is there's no way to build good businesses because we haven't had a blockchain that had sufficient performance characteristics to have all the stuff that you need for a metaverse on. Now with Somnia we do. It's quite funny though, because we do shy away from the metaverse positioning. I'll be open and honest about that, because I remember when we first started Somnia, it was actually called the Metaverse Computer. And I would go to people and people were like, the metaverse is dead. Why are you doing metaverse? And I was just like, okay, cool.
Poor Meta, they must really have a problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, they've really gone away from metaverse. If you ever listen to their earnings call, they just talk about AI now. It's just that metaverse thing is just in the corner over there. We do AI now.
Are they going to call themselves AI? That seems to be the next step.
They probably should, right, at this point. But yeah, it's I think that's why I think we broadened ourselves to like entertainment. It's also put gaming in there, also put social in there, because I think we kind of had to. Also, the chain can do much more than just the metaverse. But I think all of this is kind of the metaverse at the end of the day.
Yeah,
it's all just interoperable experiences that people go to, people monetize. It's all the same thing at the end of the day.
it's just that 0 to 1, right? Like you've got to walk before you can run, and at the end of the day, a metaverse is essentially everything. Like in the biggest vision of what a metaverse could be, it's taking your life into a universe that is not the current one you exist in, and basically being able to interact with it in whichever way you see fit. Like if you've seen Ready Player One, which I'm sure you have, like think that you can't start there. Nobody can start there unless there may be, like a Microsoft or a Meta, as they tried with billions of dollars. But even that didn't work out too well. So yeah, I completely understand this idea of like, you almost shouldn't need to call yourself a metaverse, right? Like at a certain point, it will just it contextually will be one, and at that point, other people can start calling you a metaverse. But there's no real reason for you to have to do that yourselves right now. At least that's how I would wrap my head around it. I guess the next question I have for you is really in line with the 0 to 1, and it's how did you get from taking Somnia from like this initial idea to a functioning L1 blockchain? That couldn't have been like there's just no way that could have been easy, especially whilst having to figure out even the vocabulary had to change to really be able to, how you were talking to investors, how you're talking to even people who are going to use this thing. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that story.
God, there's loads of things we could go through here. I'll go through a bit of the technical genesis, because that's quite interesting, and then I'll go. The actual building of the business is also pretty interesting. So, technology-wise, we kind of started like most. You should build any software, taking stuff that exists and kind of trying to iterate on it and improve it. So we took things like RocksDB, which is a very well-used database in the space. We took things like the Tendermint protocol. We took things like the Geth client. We basically trying to mash stuff together and like rework it a little bit to make it more performant. That gets you like a little bit of the way, but nowhere near what you have to do. So we ended up slowly but surely having to rip every single bit out and rewrite the whole blockchain from scratch over many, many iterations. So that's what Somnia is basically. It's a front to back rewrite, which we did through learning, basically like trying small things, working out change performance, and then learning again and doing that over and over again multiple times. So the technology was quite a journey. It was quite a fast journey though. We did get very far very quickly. I think this is because we had a lot of experience from the games industry. The team kind of knew a lot about how to really optimize distributed systems at a hardcore level. And so that was very, very useful and gave us kind of a leg up, I think. In terms of the creation of the company, I think one of the funniest things for me was so we already had the core engineering team, but we very early on hired kind of like marketing, which most technology products don't do. They normally think about, let's build the product, make sure it's perfect, and then hire marketing. But I kind of learned from previous experiences that you can build the best technology in the world, and if you don't have a very strong go-to-market, you will fail. So we very early on kind of had the marketing part of the company kind of working and getting its feet out there. And then the other part, this is like my third lesson as the founder, was you then need what I call retention. And that's really community in my mind in Web3. And so we started very on kind of building up the community from like the ground up, no people, to like slowly growing that up over time. And as I kind of always say, the chain is only as strong as its community. And I think it's a really important part that a lot of people just focus purely on technology and product, whilst we kind of started that off from the ground up, building it up slowly over time. And it's now become a massive asset that we can use across all of the applications, across all of the ecosystem. So then Yeah, we can go more into like the investor side. I don't know where you want to go with this. We can go more
That's a
into
really
like
good
the
question. Honestly, I'd love to talk a little bit more about the business experience, like the real like startup nature, especially like anythings that you feel are like learning lessons for other people who, maybe in some way building something that aligns with what Somnia had to do. If there's anything that you went, why did we do this? Like this was just a path that we didn't need to take, or any big lesson that immediately is as I'm talking right now, you're like, Jack, yeah, I got to tell you about this thing, this scenario. I'd love to hear about it.
there's hundreds. I think the biggest thing for me, so I come and a lot of us have come from a Web 2 background. So we understand how to go to market in Web 2 businesses. Web 3 is different. I think the major learning I've had is realizing what I call like that founder funnel, which a lot of people talk about in space, but I'd never really heard or understood.
Mm,
Really, you have to be out there a lot more, talking to your community, talking to the wider crypto ecosystem, and being a person. And I realized I didn't clock this until way too late. The reason is the trust element.
yes.
Like there's been so many problems in the space with scam projects with rugs and things like that, and you have to be a face that's present there, that's talking to people that people can buy into and trust. And I realized that. I also realized that you need to be much more authentic. Like
Yes.
if you look at like kind of accounts, they can only really say certain things. They can't be like truly authentic, whilst a founder can, or a person that works in the company can. And
Mm,
so people, I think, see that and understand that a lot more. I think the final thing is you connect with people much more than you connect with brands. You see a person, you kind of like them or get on with them or see what they're saying, you like them. And so I realized that was much more important than I kind of was doing initially. I've changed like 180 very quickly when I realized that, but I kind of wish I was doing that right from the beginning in retrospect. Um, I think the other thing, this one's a bit more tricky. I think we're still working that out, is the uses of incentives. So incentives in Web3 are like a double-edged sword, where if you start putting down incentives, you'll get loads of people coming in, but they're not necessarily the like true fans of the project and the
mm,
core people. And so really, I still think we're working this out about how much to use incentives and not use incentives. And it's a really tricky thing that Web3 is one of the most powerful characteristics, the fact you can use that. But how you do that well is something that we're still kind of balancing, I'd say, today. But what I would say to people in terms of a piece of advice is be careful how you use that, because it can cause you problems. I remember looking at our metrics and being like, we're doing really well. Loads of stuff is growing. And then I was like, most of it is incentive driven. We need to kind of change this to make sure we're getting a core set of fans that can really push out the ecosystem and brand going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, like you're really in tune to the space. I think that there's just, we've been only speaking for 20 minutes. Like immediately, I know you've been here a while, like just from the take so far. And I've been in the space like 5 years for those who don't know me, and basically been speaking on spaces for hours and hours a day since that time. And I think one thing that you're speaking of right now that I completely align with is authenticity, but also this idea of the space still not having figured out rewards. I just don't think anyone has genuinely got it. And it reminds me a little bit about content creation, because this is something that I figured out like really early, and then consistently refigure out because I forget and then go through it again and again. But you as a creator can incentivize growth of an audience by just talking about the metas. You can talk about like, everyone is talking right now about Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about Bitcoin. Everyone's talking about metaverses right now. I'm going to talk about metaverses. You're going to get followers for that. As soon as you start talking about stuff that isn't the meta, and you're like, oh no, I want to talk about gaming, I want to talk about whatever my passion is, all of a sudden the engagement's gone. And it's like, okay, I have 100,000 followers, but every time I post about this thing, zero engagement. And I think that's basically what projects are now understanding. And it's actually the 2 points that you've just flagged to me. It's both of those things converging. It's this idea that you've realized that you have to be more present or authentic as a builder, and then you need to reward an audience. But without those two things together, you're just going to develop an audience that are attracted to the rewards, not the project, or to
Yep.
you. And yeah, that's really, honestly, I haven't heard founders that like quickly just be like, these are the 2 big key points. Like I said, it's great to hear that your takeaways here, and yeah, really, really fun conversation so far.
Yeah.
Listeners, go
I
on,
think
Paul.
I think just to riff on that a little bit, that thing is prevalent throughout the whole industry. What I
Yeah,
love most is the VC side of this, where literally they will shift. So at the moment, VCs are just AI, AI,
yeah,
AI, AI, and I've sat there and asked VCs, what do you think are the key use cases for AI? And they can't really give me an answer because it's so early. And they're just like, there has to be AI. And I'm like sitting there. So I go and pitch the chain. I talk about gaming. I talk about the vision we have for gaming. I talk about metaverse. I talk about the vision there. And they're like, what about AI? I'm like, well, the agents can play it. And I have to talk. I've now created this whole pitch around why Somnia is the place for AIs because it's the thing VCs want. But it's so mimetic and so funny. I'm just like, oh, what's going to be next?
Yeah, it's that Will Ferrell Zoolander moment. Like it's so hot right now. Like it literally it's just that, and you've just got to at least in some way respect that and like find a way. But yeah, AI is the metaverse. Like when I said about NFTs earlier and like how they all decided that they were going to build like this AAA metaverse. Now everyone's integrating AI, and it really just takes that one question of why to figure out 90% of these guys are just like, oh, because it's attracting investors right now. Great great insights. I love that riff. You've spoken a couple of times now. I actually made a note of it whilst you were talking about the experience of the team. So I'd love to dive into that a little bit more because this really isn't easy. Like what you've done so far, apparently, like from what you were saying, you've done it quite quickly through just iteration and through learning and through just, basically rebuilding and experiencing and experimenting. Tell me a little bit about this team. Like, who are they? Like, why are they able to do this? Because I can't picture what role would even be able to say, yeah, we have experience doing this thing.
I think the best. I don't know if I can do this. If I can share a video, I think this really will help people kind of understand a bit more.
Yeah, Kato, do we have you? Kato might be able to share a video for us.
I don't know if we can't. It's okay. I could just talk about it. Okay.
Our little Jamie there. If you ever watch Joe Rogan, we've got like Kato in the background. He just comes in omnipresent voice. Yes, I can do this for you.
Whereabouts do I share it? What do I do here? All right, cool. All right. So basically what the video is going to be is the tech we previously built with the team. Okay. So what it is basically a massively multiplayer digital event that we did with Major League Baseball. So it is 7,600 baseball fans all in the same place at the same time digitally. They can all see each other in real time. They can all talk to each other in real time. So wait, we're getting the video up now. So if we play this, yeah. So this is activations we used to do with Major League Baseball. So this is 7,600 baseball fans all in the same place at the same time, all can see each other digitally, all can talk to each other in real time. They then have this kind of collectathon with NFTs. These large characters here, they're telling the players where to go and what to do. So this requires like a massive innovation in terms of rendering and networking to be able to do this in the games industry. And now the really cool thing about this event is they run in here and they go to the stadium. This baseball game is a digital twin of the live baseball match. So we stream data from the baseball stadium into the cloud, turn that into 3D models in real time, and you get a one-to-one replica of the real life baseball match and the digital baseball match. So you'll see the side by side in a second here, where it's all synchronized. Yeah. And so consumers can kind of go into this and feel like they're in a baseball game, but they're at home on their couch. They're on their way to work. All you need is an internet connected device to play this and use it. You don't need a gaming PC or anything like that. So this obviously allows anyone in the world to kind of go to these baseball games. So essentially the same team that kind of built this stuff has been building the core blockchain. And so they are really experienced, high quality distributed systems engineers that really know how to optimize stuff. What I would say is that when you get up to the kind of transaction throughput that we're talking about, the biggest problem you start to get is a networking problem, because you have to send so much data between all the validators on the network. This is so much data flying about. And so we have really good compression algorithms that we've taken learnings from that experience and kind of applied that to blockchain, basically. And that's how we've kind of got to the performance characteristics that you're kind of seeing today. So what I would say is the team was not built from scratch. It was a ready-made team that have been doing really difficult distributed systems programming in the games industry for the past 12 years since I started at Improbable ages ago. The first tech we ever built was this tech to build MMOs. Then we built this high density tech. So they really know their stuff in terms of high performance computing. So it wasn't that I just went randomly off the street and was like, hey, you look like a good engineer. Do you want to come work here? These are people that have basically been building this stuff for like 12 years and really know their stuff. At the end of the day, I think people think blockchains as like magic technology that does stuff in a different way. It's not. It's just a set of computers that kind of work together to achieve something. It's a database. It's a networking protocol. It's an execution layer. It's just tech at the end of the day. And if you have really good engineers that understand distributed systems, they should be able to build a blockchain. This is because there's already been loads of groundwork put down in terms of how you do signatures, and that kind of stuff has already been kind of solved, the security side of things. So really now it's a computing and distributed system problem to scale blockchains up to the level we're talking about.
Yeah, look, I'm blown away. I don't often find myself too speechless, especially since it's my job not to be. But I do think that look, it's just a baseball thing, like the actual, like I didn't even hear of that experience being a thing where you can actually like live show that through a visual like metaverse of an actual baseball game that's going along. I guess my follow up to this, and this one's like completely just popped into my head as I was watching that video, is okay, you've basically got a bunch of rock stars who are building this, is what I'm hearing. Like just some developers who can basically, if it's innovative, if it's tech, they're going to be able to put their hands to it because they've done it in so many different worlds in the past that they're just good at this shit. How did you convince them to be like, look, the blockchain's the next thing? Like, this is, because that was pretty cool what you've just shown me. If I was building that and you were like, look, guys, blockchain, I would be like, but I like baseball. Like, this is pretty cool. Like, tell me, did you have any of those moments with the team where it's like, look, you had to almost pitch them the vision? And if you did, what was it that you pitched them to say, look, we're pivoting to this now?
So the way, as I kind of saying, the way all those are going to monetize, and they do monetize today, is digital asset sales and access. Yeah. So they're selling skins, they're selling tickets, and there's other ones I could show you, like in the music industry, there's other sports as well. The problem was, how do you make sure that people can buy those items and then use them across all the different types of experiences? And so when you kind of lay out, this is the problem we have to engineer, and this system has to be trusted by all these different third parties who don't necessarily all want to use the same centralized system. And so when you kind of lay that problem set out to the engineers, they go, well, we have to build a blockchain to solve this. And then the problem is, if you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people all trying to interact with a blockchain, we need a really high performance blockchain. So there wasn't really a lot of convincing, because they already really bought into this vision of this kind of interoperable metaverse with lots of different experiences, people moving between them. And kind of getting to a point of, now how do we turn this into the next step? It's like, well, we need to monetize it. How do we monetize it? Are these digital assets, are blockchains necessary now? So it isn't particularly hard when you get to like the first principles thinking of like, these are the steps, these are the things we need. But to be clear, there are a set of engineers that are still working on that tech. That tech hasn't stopped. There's a team called M Squared. They actually work with Yuga Labs. If you've seen Other Side, they're the tech partners behind that, and they're still continuing developing that technology. It's not stopped by any means. But what I would say is, when you give them the problem set, it's kind of like, obviously we have to build a blockchain to solve this. How else are we going to do it, basically?
Yeah, that's so cool. Just to like, everyone sort of came to the same conclusion. Like, if you're in crypto and blockchain and you're bullish on it, these sort of stories are like giving you another year of a bear market that you can just ride through, because you hear stories like this where it's like, okay, so we had this really cool product, we had a bunch of developers who really understood it, were building it, and they all came to the same conclusion that, oh, we need blockchain to be able to continue to build this and monetize it out in a way where it can be sustainable and can be a business as well as a really cool experience, because this thing still needs to run. And so yeah, look, absolutely incredible stuff. Listeners, again, if you're liking this, likes, retweets, make sure you follow Insomnia. This is a freaking cool conversation. If you haven't realized, I'm definitely enjoying it. If you are too, likes, retweets. Where do we go next? Somnia built to power like Web3 apps, protocols at scale. But I guess the next thing is, do you see like, how do you see really thriving on this platform? Like, and who do you see thriving on the platform? Is it going to be the gamers? Is it going to be the creators? Is it going to be the developers? DeFi is now a big part of the space. There's so many areas when you think of not metaverse, but like the areas around metaverse that people are going to really be able to sort of make and take advantage of this product. Who do you see being those people who are really going to be able to take advantage of this?
I mean, it's everyone you've mentioned there. Yeah. I think let's go bit by bit. So I think the first port of call for us that we're really focusing on first is the gaming segment.
Yeah.
The reason for this is, one, our background, like been in the games industry for 12 years. We know a lot of people there, and we have a very strong network. I know, for instance, do not go sell blockchain to the AAA games industry right now. You might get one or two small studios, but basically they are very risk averse. They're going to wait to see the kind of new games that come out of blockchain tech, and then they'll copy them. They're just very risk averse. I've tried to sell them technology to build fancy new games in the past, MMOs in particular, and I did succeed actually twice, but they can the games in the middle of them. It's just an incredibly hard thing to do because of their risk aversion. Like they may as well build Call of Duty 17, not some random new game that they could take a risk on. So for us, what we're trying to enable is kind of independent developers to build Web3 games more efficiently and effectively. So there are kind of two flavors to that. One side is a cost side. So I didn't realize this. So if you look at Web3 games today, when you play them, they do this thing called gas sponsorship, where they're basically paying the gas fees for you behind the scenes. They do this so they can get Web2 consumers, because Web2 consumers aren't going to go to an exchange, download some tokens and put it into some wallet. They're going to just go and play games and have fun at the end of the day. When you look at this, though, they're actually spending thousands of dollars a month on not many players. They maybe have 500 daily active users, so that's a very small game in terms of the games industry, but they're spending thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars a month in terms of gas sponsorship. That's just an unviable business by any means. So with Somnia, because of the super high performance characteristics and the amount of block space we have, we can price it incredibly cheap. And I'm talking like really cheap. Now, people today are like, well, it doesn't need to be any cheaper. Like when I go to an L2, it only costs me a cent to do a transaction. But when you as a business are doing millions of these transactions, it matters a lot to you. It may not matter to the end consumer, but it matters to you. So for us, we're trying to make the economics of that just make sense for game developers so they can actually do that kind of stuff. The next thing we're doing, because we basically made this super computer that's decentralized with loads of compute power, you can now start putting a lot more logic and data on chain from your video game that you couldn't do before. It just was unviable to do this. And so the first example of this that we're doing is we're getting developers to put what we call the metadata of their game. So think of like every time you do a headshot, or every time you win a match, or every time you level up, that will all go on chain basically. And with this data, you can now start to build applications around that data, composable applications like you saw in DeFi. So a couple of them, like a companion app to view your character and kind of customize it. You could build another game that's using that data in some form to kind of get incentives, to find players, to do a leaderboard, something like that. But the one that I'm most interested in, which I think is going to be a pretty killer use case, is you can use that to do prediction markets. So I, as a player, can go, I reckon I'm going to get 10 headshots in the next match. I put down a bet. And then based on the fact that the headshots are all being registered on chain, I get paid out if I get 10 headshots. So I think that combination is going to be a very killer combination. And I'm very interested in that. The way we're doing that is we're doing that in a way that's seamless for developers. So you can be a Web2 game dev, stay in the game engine. You don't have to do smart contracts or code anything on the blockchain. You just call out to this API and it will do the rest of it for you. And I think that's very important as well, to make sure we're bridging to the game devs to make it easy for them to use. So that's like the first step. The next set is then trying to get devs to move more of the logic and data of the game on chain. So this is now the actual logic of the game. This is what people in the industry call on-chain games, or fully on-chain games. There's a couple of these at the moment. I think the biggest one's probably Pirate Nation. Yes. The problem here, one, you still have that cost problem. So I think, I can't say the numbers yet, but literally we run the numbers for Pirate Nation. We probably save them 10x, maybe even 50x on what they're currently paying on a per day basis. But so there's a cost problem. The other problem, though, is just having enough compute power to run one of these games. You need a lot. And normally what they have to do today is they run their own blockchain, basically, because that's the only way they could scale their game out. With us, because we have so much capacity, you don't have to do that anymore. And the vision is really about, because they're putting more of this logic on chain, other developers can pull in that logic and data and then build a game from that. And then another developer can pull some logic and data and build a game from that. So you get what I call composable games. And because of this, you'll get many more games built much faster. And then you'll find more fun video games. And then you'll bring in more consumers. Game development is all basically an exploration game. You're trying to find the most fun game in a kind of state space. And that, I think, will enable that on a mass scale. And the reason I so strongly believe this already happens in Web2. If you look at all of the major genres over the last 30 years, it's all been mods of existing games. MOBAs were a mod of Warcraft 3. Survival shooters were a mod of armor. They're all mods basically. So I think this, if you start to enable developers to put more of the logic and data on chain, you get this kind of modding system of all games, which is going to be mad in terms of game discovery and what you can build. And therefore might find more fun games. So that's the gaming one. That still there's a tooling gap there. It's not easy to build on-chain games today. And so we're going to be developing a lot more product offering to help developers code all within the game engine and then push that on-chain in a much easier, seamless way, because that's the way that has to scale out, I think, because you need to bring in the Web2 devs. Makes sense?
So basically, we're talking gamers right now and developers. They would probably be who you'd reference as like Somnia's core right now.
That's step one.
Okay.
I think there's a second step, which is also, it's almost going on in parallel, which is more the metaverse side.
Yes.
For that side, you've obviously seen the M squared stuff that I kind of showed you before. We've created a new protocol and set of standards for interoperable digital assets. So it's called Metaverse Markup Language, where you can create these 3D assets that can be used across all the experiences on the network. And I think the play, in our view, is a UGC play where creators can come, easily create content, publish them on chain, and then monetize them in a much more effective way. So really, that I think really will appeal to a broad set of creators. And I actually think it's going to end up appealing to consumers as well. The reason is we're working with a couple of deep in networks that do basically AI inference with consumer hardware. So you kind of put in some prompts, it will farm out the kind of AI call to a bunch of GPU machines around the world, and you get back the results. So they do this at the moment for image generation. So you quickly type in a prompt like cat with a funny hat, and then you come back with a load of pictures of cat with a funny hat. But they're now moving that into 3D assets as well. And then if you add 3D assets with the fact that now you can start to code them, I think you're going to end up getting everyone being able to build these 3D digital assets, publish them to the blockchain, monetize them, and then create this kind of UGC mishmash, which will make loads of content really fast. So I'd also say it's for content creators as well, because there's going to be a very strong UGC content play with this open metaverse framework that we've kind of been building, with the blockchain obviously at the core of that. So that's another place that I think is going to be pretty interesting, pretty cool.
Yeah. Honestly, I think you referenced this earlier, but attention, right? Like you can build the coolest product, but if you don't have anyone to see it, then it's never going to go anywhere. And I think a big part of that right now we have to acknowledge is the creators. Like it's one thing, I think, building your own brand, and I think this is probably the highest lever you can probably pull in Web3 right now is as a founder, building your own brand where people can connect to you, not just your project. If your project shouts a brand name as opposed to an individual face, I think you're falling behind. And, you could say Elon Musk, you could say Tim Cook, you could say a bunch of people who literally you look at their account and it's like 10x the follower size of the brand. I think that is something that more and more people are going to look to connect to because of AI and everything else that's going on in this digital world. But the part of that still gets left for me is, even if I really connect to you and like you're an absolute vibe on a show, I think you're the most transparent human being on the planet. I know you're selling a service, right? Like you're behind Somnia. You want that product to succeed. I am very, very aware that is the end goal of this content. With creators, I do think you get that sort of one step of separation. That means that you get a different side of connection to an audience. They're still going to come for the founders, especially once they like the product and they're excited about the product. But they're going to go to the creators because they like the creators. And if they can show your product as part of you engaging with the creator, I think that's where a lot of the attention is also going to come from. So yeah, I think the idea of having that as part of your core when you're building is a really smart play. I think it definitely speaks to where I think the space is going to go over the next 5 to 10 years. I feel like you probably do too.
Yeah, I think ultimately blockchain is a very useful technology for creators to be able to monetize more effectively. Yeah. And so you can't shy away there. I think it's just incorrect. And for me, as you said, it is a more authentic voice. Like I think one of my favorite creators in the community at the moment is a guy called Director Creator. Funny, he's got creator in his name, DC. He just builds stuff all the time and it's awesome. And like he just puts out there, he just does it because he enjoys it, and you just see it come up on the Twitter feed, and it's so fun to watch. He builds these like 3D experiences, or he builds these little mini games, and he's using the tech to like its maximum capacity and pushing it, but making like these really cool pieces of content around it that I just think attract people and make it seem like a more authentic place. And I think enabling that is an incredibly important thing for anyone to do. I think that can come in lots of slices, though. You don't necessarily have to go with 3D creator. Even if you just like create written content, I think that's amazing. I love all the art the community builds. Like I just see it on my feed and I get so happy. I'm like, I love all this art. Yeah, it's. I think it's a great way to get the message out there and build a more authentic brand.
Completely agree. I guess following up from this, then I want to talk a little bit more long term of this vision, because you guys are clearly building something that takes a ton of experience and a ton of iteration from, but there must be like a broader vision for all of this at the end of the day to get you there and for what you're testing. So like specifically, if I had to ask you to picture Somnia, especially like let's say 5 years from now, just to keep the context a little bit nearer to the future, what is it that you feel the project will be at that time? What user is it that you'd be most excited to see using it, and why?
Yeah, I think there are kind of two paths that could happen. One path is it becomes almost like a Web3 gaming publisher. So the blockchain is ultimately a very cool piece of tech, but there's loads of really high quality games using Web3 mechanisms and mechanics that are bringing in a Web2 consumer audience. I think one of the key things for me is the space needs to grow and bring in Web2 consumers and Web2 developers in order to grow, in order to become what we all believe it can become. And so there's one world I see where there's a bunch of really high quality games that are appealing to massive sets of consumers, and there's hundreds of millions of Web2 consumers all playing the games. There's another world, and this actually could be the same world, to be fair, both of these can happen side by side, where it becomes almost like a decentralized version of Roblox. So you have loads of content creators building UGC content. You have loads of people building mini experiences and games which are being monetized. And there's just this explosion of different content which you can play in and explore. And it's all interoperable, so you as a consumer go between them. And you're almost making a decentralized version of Roblox there. And that, I think you're still going to have a bunch of gamers in there, but I think that's a much broader consumer base. I think that's pretty much everyone at the end of the day could go into that experience. But I think it's a much harder challenge to get there. I actually see that more like the 10-year horizon than the 5-year horizon. But maybe with AI and the ability to create this content so much faster, it will happen in 5 years. But that's the other kind of key vision piece that we always have in our mind, this kind of decentralized, permissionless version of Roblox, where you don't have these egregious fees, where it's all interoperable, where anyone can build on top of it. I think that's another way we could go. I think we are both pushing in both directions at the moment, and they could both happen side by side as well.
That's super cool. Look, you mentioned earlier that you could show us another demo on the music side. I think I'd really love to visualize that, because this is something I think you get to hear a lot about in the crypto space. You very, very rarely actually get to see what that looks like, unless you're that interested that you go and actually go and have that experience. So I'd love to provide that for our audience, just to give them a side by side if you have it.
Yeah, I think the reason is most of these experiences, they're kind of targeted at Web2 people. So the baseball one was targeted at baseball fans. And only really if you're really into Web3, into the metaverse and into that kind of space, would you have kind of seen it and kind of been like, oh, cool, right, I get that. So let's get this video up. I think this video, if we go to like, let me just put it in the chat.
Yeah, Kato, if you're still around, or Guy in the Sky, then...
Yeah, I got it there. I think I'd fast forward to like 15 seconds in. This one's a much shorter video though, so we have to talk over it quite quickly.
Here we go.
I'll probably mute it. Gonna get copyright strikes. So basically in a second, so this was like the warm-up party where there's mini listen party to some of Alexa, who's a famous K-pop artist. Then we had like this big event with thousands of people, and they were all kind of watching her as an artist perform. She was getting them to emote together. She was talking to them, interacting with them, and obviously doing kind of a live performance of her music. I think the coolest thing for me with this was you as a person who is a fan of her could like go next to her and interact with her and kind of be very close to one of your idols, which you can only really do in a digital setting. If you try to do that in the physical world, security would like bundle you off and it's like not a thing. But with this, you could have what we called like intimacy at scale, where she could interact with thousands of her fans in this kind of really immersive digital environment in a very personal way, that you could just never do in real life, basically. And so this has kind of come on a little bit. There's like now more mocap stuff and like bigger stuff here, but I think the music scene, especially in Korea, has got a lot of traction. There's another one we did with Twice, which is obviously a big K-pop band. And so this is all about basically getting what we call intimacy at scale, where you kind of get these massive events with thousands of people and they're all kind of interacting with their fans and their stars. There was another one we did with like football players, where we got Zinchenko from Arsenal, and he kind of got to interact with his fans, do play mini games with them. And I think this is another theme where you kind of get creators or get famous celebrities, and they can then be with their fans, interact with their fans in a quite organic, fun way, but in a safe way, I think, because if they were to do that in real life, they just get, they get in trouble in some form. So that's another way to skate as well. Oh yeah, logistics would be mad. Security would be mad. Yeah, it just wouldn't happen, basically.
Insurance would be literally extortionate. Like, yeah, just to I can imagine some of these bigger creators and the insurance they already have to go through, and the fact that they have like security around them 24/7. Like Kai Tenet, I've seen a couple of his videos recently where Speed is coming at him and the security guard sort of comes and takes away. It's like this is wild. Like, this is literally two of the biggest creators on the planet, and the bouncers are still getting involved. Look, we're 50 minutes into the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to have a conversation with you, Paul, and thank you so much for your time today. I think before we do close out, though, because obviously we still have a couple minutes left, I'd love to know from your perspective, if we come a little bit now from the future to the present, are there any current updates, milestones? Is there anything about Somnia right now that is being built that you'd like our audience to be able to take away before we close out the show? You know, is there any milestones coming up, updates, anything that you're just excited about that they can see either right now or in the very near future?
Yeah, so I think, so we released our testnet kind of like 4 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And we've been rolling out more ecosystem projects week to week. So what I would say is stay tuned. There is loads of really cool content coming down the line. There's a bunch of games that are going to be announced. I think later this week, we're going to relaunch our kind of web-based metaverse, which enables creators to create that content and UGC stuff that I was talking about before. So there's basically going to be a lot of fun stuff. I think fun is like the key word for Web3 consumers to come in and play around with. So what I would say, if you're in the community, hang around. There's going to be loads of cool, fun stuff to do. For a developer, I think there's a new piece of tech which we're starting to launch. It's called Etherbase. TLDR, this is a bit technical. It turns a blockchain into a real-time streaming database, which is crazy and can only be done because of the performance characteristics of Somnia. And so with that, you can build all of these applications much easier without having to necessarily do a load of complex stuff on chain. So I think that's going to be a really cool piece of technology that's going to enable loads more developers to start developing with Somnia and building these kind of mass consumer scaled up applications in a much easier way, which we're starting to like talk about now. So that'll be something that's coming out in the next couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, super, super cool. And yeah, look, I can see the audience typing away here as well. I think there's got to be one of the most like engaged communities I've ever seen. So massive shout out to all you guys. I'd spend the whole length of this show shouting you all out. So just know that I have seen you all. Thank you so much for joining. Obviously, this has been like a really deep dive into Somnia from its inception, you know, origin stories. But as we go on with these shows, there will be chances to ask questions and get a little bit more involved. And also, I have still taken away these questions. So if there's anything I thought, ooh, that'll make an interesting question for a follow-up show, then just know that that is there. So thank you so much to our audience. Likes, retweets, follows, all the good stuff. If you've enjoyed this content, it means we'll be able to give you more of it because you know that's what you want to see. Paul, again, massive shout out to you. I think just super cool shit, like just super, super cool stuff that you're building here. I'm really, really excited to dive into it more and see like what specifics you guys have got going on. And I really love the video experience as well, like being able to see the music, the baseball. Can't wait to see what else you guys are cooking up. Any final closing thoughts from you? I know we've just gone through the updates and milestones. Anything else you'd like to tell the audience before we write this one off?
No, I think we're good. I think just stay tuned to the community. We've got loads of cool drops and stuff coming up. And if you're a developer, start playing around with the testnet. What could you build now that you couldn't build before due to blockchain limits? Yep.
Amazing. Well, that's great. And look, again, thank you to all our audience for tuning in. Thank you to Somnia. Give us all a follow, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, folks.